He thought repairing a mysterious alien starship would be just another job. But the moment he stepped aboard, he realized the real challenge wasn't the ship. It was the Queen watching his every move. The human wandered through the debris field like a man who had absolutely no business being there. But somehow, by some improbable twist of fate or sheer stubbornness, he was. The remnants of ships from half a dozen interstellar skirmishes floated around him, some spinning lazily, others emitting low hums that suggested some part of their core still wanted to fight even in death. Sparks rained from a nearby freighter, each one sizzling against his suit, and he ducked instinctively. "Really? Right after breakfast?" he muttered, checking the diagnostic scanner he held like a magic wand. This isn't the kind of morning a human wants. He had been hired, or more accurately, had been strong-armed by an interstellar contract, to repair a ship that looked like it had been through an armada's worth of battles. From the outside, it resembled a jagged, metallic beast with panels missing and cables dangling like tentacles. The cockpit glass was cracked in several places, reflecting the distant stars in jagged shards. Inside, the controls were a maze of glowing panels, some alien symbols blinking in a sequence he couldn't immediately decode. He squinted, scratched his head, and then muttered again, "And they wonder why humans get paid extra for intuition." As he crouched over a damaged console, a sudden shimmer at the far end of the corridor caught his attention. He froze, thinking, as any human might, that he had accidentally triggered some hidden defense mechanism. A tall figure stepped into view, framed by the broken doorway, and the sheer elegance of her presence made him stumble backward. Not literally, his feet stayed planted, but if there had been any dignity left in him at that moment, it definitely fled. She was almost human in appearance, which was what made the difference so unsettling. Her skin was pale and flawless, her eyes an impossible shade of icy blue that seemed to see straight into the cluttered corridors of his mind. Her long silver hair fell over her shoulders, brushing against armor that looked like it had survived a supernova. And her ears. The long, pointed ears that curved gently toward the ceiling betrayed her origin in ways no human feature ever could. She watched him, arms folded, the faintest twitch of one ear betraying impatience or amusement. He wasn't sure which, probably both. "Human," she said, voice soft but commanding, like ice sliding over metal. "You will fix my ship." He stammered, glancing at the console beneath his fingers. "I was planning on a coffee break first, and maybe a snack, maybe lunch, or, he gestured vaguely at the twisted cables, "this thing. Looks like it might explode if I just stare at it too hard." Her lips curved into the faintest smirk, and she stepped closer, so that her presence filled the corridor like gravity. "No breaks, no excuses." He sighed. "Figures. Why do they never warn you about these things in the repair manuals?" He shook his head and muttered, "Then again, if there were manuals, who would read them? Me? Never." The first hour passed in a haze of sparks, smoke, and his own nervous muttering. He had learned early on not to panic when alien technology hissed, glowed, or tried to electrocute him with tiny bolts of blue energy. Instead, he made jokes to himself. "Oh yes, that panel definitely looks happy, so happy it's screaming." The alien queen, as he soon realized she must be, leaned on the edge of the repair bay, arms crossed, tilting her head ever so slightly, ears twitching in rhythm with his frantic movements. "You know," he said aloud, "if I survive this, I'm going to tell everyone I fixed a royal starship with duct tape and sheer charm." He flashed a nervous grin. "That's a good resume booster, right?" The queen didn't answer immediately, just watched, and he could feel her amusement like a physical thing pressing against him. Her silence was dangerous. That silence meant she was thinking, which in her position was probably more lethal than any weapon in her armory. And yet there was a sparkle in her eyes, a curiosity that made him mutter under his breath, "Well, that's not terrifying at all." As he moved from panel to panel, he realized the ship was more complex than he could have imagined. Some controls required him to think in sequences of logic that bordered on telepathy. Holographic panels flickered and responded to thought patterns he didn't know he had. A small floating assistant, roughly the size of a basketball, hovered beside him, buzzing intermittently. Its mechanical voice chirped. Incorrect sequence detected. Please try again. He whirled toward it, shouting, I am *trying. Do I look like I've slept this week? The orb clicked, spun, and buzzed again, clearly unconcerned with human frailty. By midday, the repairs were mostly complete, though every panel he touched seemed determined to remind him it could have killed him at any moment. He leaned back, wiped his brow, and said aloud, There, done. Your ship is technically, less broken. Functioning, in fact. Don't sue me if it suddenly develops sentience and starts piloting itself to another galaxy, okay. The Queen's smirk broadened, and she stepped closer. He instinctively straightened, trying to appear composed while every instinct in his body screamed that he looked like a human noodle under scrutiny. Well, she said softly, you have done well, but your work is not complete. He blinked. Oh, right, of course. What's left? The coffee, a tiny alien snack. Oh, should I, perform a ceremonial dance? I hear that fixes most alien starship malfunctions. Her lips quirked upward at the corners. You are amusing. But the exit is not available to you at the moment. The words hit him like a graviton pulse to the chest. He laughed nervously. Oh, ha, hilarious. Classic human humor, locked in by royalty. Yes, funny. Her long ears twitched, and for the first time he saw a flicker of real emotion, amusement, but also a test. You are correct, she said lightly. You are confined until you prove yourself worthy of the ship's command. He groaned, leaning against the nearest console. Great, so not only did I fix it, but now I live in it. Cozy, minimalist living, zero privacy, infinite sparks. Fun times. Do I get a toothbrush? The Queen tilted her head, watching him as if he were a particularly entertaining puzzle. He realized then that this confinement wasn't a punishment, it was something else. A challenge, maybe, or an experiment, probably both. He had repaired her ship, yes, but now he had been caught in a web of curiosity, intellect, and interstellar power that he could neither escape nor fully comprehend. As he explored the ship, trying doors and controls, he discovered systems that reacted to his thoughts in strange, almost mocking ways. Holographic star maps danced at the edge of his vision, responding to every gesture, while corridors shifted subtly, as if the ship itself were observing him. He tripped over a small, hovering maintenance bot, which buzzed indignantly. Careful, it beeped. Human fragility detected. Fragility? Me? Never, he said, brushing himself off with exaggerated dignity. I am a master of repair, a genius of improvisation, and occasionally, well, mostly occasionally, graceful in zero gravity. The Queen's laughter, soft and melodic, echoed down the corridor. His ears twitched. He laughed too, realizing that this moment of levity, amid sparks, floating tools, and alien technology, was the beginning of something unpredictable. They were trapped together, yes, but in that confinement, a strange camaraderie was forming, punctuated by humor, missteps, and the undeniable awareness that neither of them fully understood the other. By the time the artificial sun of the ship's interior dimmed into evening, he had learned the first lesson of working for an alien queen. Fix the ship, survive the confinement, and never, ever underestimate her sense of humor. And perhaps, just perhaps, the long journey ahead would be more thrilling than any repair job he had ever undertaken. The human woke to the hum of the ship's engines vibrating through the floor panels like a low-frequency heartbeat. He rubbed his eyes, wishing he could rub away the memory of the Queen's smirk from the night before. Somehow, confined within this alien vessel, sleep felt both luxurious and slightly terrifying. After all, he had discovered that the ship could detect emotions. One wrong thought, and he was pretty sure a panel could electrocute him out of sheer judgment. Stretching, he glanced at the corridors, observing the subtle luminescent patterns that shifted along the walls. The ship wasn't static, it breathed, and judging by the slight, almost imperceptible flicker of lights near the Queen's chambers, it was amused by him already. He muttered, Great. I've been trapped on a sentient, mood-ring spaceship with a long-eared monarch who thinks I'm entertaining. He decided exploration was better than panicking. After all, if he was to be stuck in here, he might as well familiarize himself with his metallic prison. Pushing open a sliding door, He stepped into a corridor that was narrower than expected, lined with panels that pulsed softly like bioluminescent veins. He reached out to touch one, and immediately a holographic interface sprung to life, projecting a 3D map of the ship. "Whoa," he said. "Interactive walls, great, just what I needed, a spaceship that talks back." "Careful," said a smooth, commanding voice behind him. He jumped, spinning around. The Queen was there, standing as if she had materialized out of the very air. Her silver hair caught the glow from the panels, ears twitching slightly in amusement. "That panel responds to curiosity," she said, her eyes glinting. "It knows when someone is poking where they shouldn't." He held up his hands. "Curiosity, that's me, officially curious, totally professional, not reckless, promise." A small smirk tugged at her lips. "Professional, you say? Yet here you are, wandering without permission." "Ah," he said, waving a hand like a man giving up an argument he didn't know he could win. "Permission is such a human thing. My people believe in exploring first, apologizing later." She tilted her head, long ears twitching again. "I will allow your exploration for now, but do not touch the central core. It has moods of its own, and it does not like humans." He arched an eyebrow. "Moods. The central core has moods, and you don't even discipline it. I feel like every repair manual I've ever used would laugh at this scenario." She didn't answer immediately, instead following him as he tiptoed down the corridor. She seemed unusually silent, yet the human could feel her presence like a gravity well, pulling his awareness toward her. Occasionally, he would glance at her long ears or the sharp line of her jaw and mutter jokes under his breath. "Should I bow? Nod. Pretend I'm meditating in zero gravity." "You are remarkably verbose for someone so small," she remarked, tone laced with amusement. He smiled nervously. "Size is relative. I'm dense with knowledge. Okay, mostly dense. Definitely relative." They entered the main control hub, where holographic star charts rotated slowly above the console like miniature galaxies. He reached out tentatively, and the holograms responded, spinning and shifting according to the angle of his fingers. "Oh, wow," he said. "I'm controlling the stars, just a casual Tuesday, no big deal." "You are learning quickly," she said, hovering near the edge of the chamber. "Though your methods are unconventional." "Unconventional is my middle name," he replied, straightening his back as if that were somehow impressive. "Or maybe it's Steve. Hard to remember sometimes. Definitely unconventional in approach, though." She laughed softly. It was a sound like wind chimes vibrating through crystal, a mixture of delight and warning. "You amuse me," she said, "though that will not save you if you break anything critical." He leaned against the console, grinning. "Critical me. Please, I am the master of accidental fixes and improbable solutions. Guaranteed to work, sometimes. Well, probably. Okay, maybe 50-50. As the hours passed, he grew familiar with the quirks of the ship. Doors that seemed to disappear when unobserved, corridors that subtly shifted to redirect him, and maintenance drones that followed him with eerie persistence. One in particular hovered beside him constantly, buzzing in a tone that sounded suspiciously like sarcasm. "Human, are you thinking or just panicking?" It chirped. "Both," he admitted cheerfully. "Simultaneously, multitasking at its finest." The Queen observed all this silently, yet her presence was a constant hum in his awareness. Occasionally, she would point a subtle finger, causing a panel to adjust its alignment perfectly, almost as if guiding him in invisible ways. He would mutter jokes under his breath, and she would smirk, occasionally replying with dry, cutting remarks that left him both nervous and entertained. Lunch, or the closest approximation on a ship without cafeterias, was a small compartment with replicator trays. He tried to make a sandwich, which resulted in a glowing, pulsating loaf that occasionally hissed. "Not exactly what I had in mind," he muttered. "But edible, probably, maybe. Worst case, I get glowing digestive issues." "Humans are amusing when they attempt food," the Queen observed, leaning against the doorway with her arms folded. Her long ears twitched with interest. "But you will adapt." "I adapt," he said solemnly, holding the pulsating loaf like a trophy. "I'm basically a human chameleon, though admittedly more like a clumsy, glowing chameleon." Hours turned into what felt like days as he familiarized himself with the ship's systems. Every touch was met with reactive holograms, occasional sparks, and subtle movements of the ship itself. The vessel seemed almost alive, teasing him when he tried to approach certain areas, rewarding him when he solved a puzzle or managed a sequence correctly. Humor became a survival mechanism. He joked at himself, at the ship, and occasionally at the Queen, who watched with an increasing mixture of amusement and interest. At one point, he accidentally triggered a zero-gravity chamber and went tumbling into a stack of supplies, bouncing lightly off the walls. "Perfect!" he shouted mid-spin. "Just what I wanted, an indoor space rodeo." "Thank you, mysterious floating bot. I feel so very competent." The Queen laughed, a sound that made his heart skip just a fraction, though he wasn't sure if it was fear, admiration, or a mixture of both. "You are remarkably resilient," she said. "Or remarkably foolish, perhaps both." "I prefer the term delightfully brave," he replied, arms spread wide as if to emphasize his heroic tumble. "Heroism requires a little style, you know." By evening, the human had learned the rhythms of the ship and its master. Though trapped, he felt a strange connection forming, not just with the Queen, but with the vessel itself. Every flicker of light, every responsive panel, every subtle twitch of her ears was a reminder that this wasn't a prison in the traditional sense. It was a test, a dance, and possibly the beginning of an alliance that neither of them fully understood yet. As he prepared for the artificial night cycle, floating slightly in zero gravity while the ship hummed beneath him, he muttered softly, "All right, Queen, ship, or whatever cosmic sense of humor put me here. You win this round. But tomorrow I plan to be slightly more heroic and slightly less exploding." Her laughter followed him down the corridors, echoing softly like starlight. And for the first time since he had stepped into the wreckage, he felt that maybe confinement could be entertaining. The ship shivered softly as the human floated through the central chamber, his boots, or rather, the magnetic grips on his shoes, clicking against the metal floor with a satisfying thrum. It was the final day of his confinement, or at least, he hoped it would be. He had spent countless hours navigating corridors that shifted just enough to keep him alert, teasing the occasional slip in concentration with panels that hummed when he passed, floating maintenance bots that buzzed with mock indignation, and holograms that reacted to his every thought. Somewhere in the mix, he had also discovered that the Queen's ship was not just a vessel, it had a personality. A mischievous, exacting personality that seemed to enjoy his constant stream of jokes, complaints, and occasionally brilliant improvisations. The Queen appeared at the doorway, her silver hair gleaming under the ambient light, ears twitching with amusement. "You are ready," she said, as if the decision had always been hers to make. He raised an eyebrow. "Ready?" he echoed. "I'm barely coherent half the time, and my shirt is covered in something that may or may not be mildly radioactive. But sure, ready sounds good." Her eyes glinted, icy but not unkind. "You have learned more than I anticipated. The ship functions at peak efficiency because of you, and you have proven resourceful, adaptable, and resilient." He scratched his head. "Resilient, huh? I was going for heroic, but resilient works too. Very classy, Queen." He added, almost as an afterthought, "Do you offer badges or something?" She smiled faintly. "Perhaps someday. For now, your reward is freedom and the trust of a starship and its captain." The human swallowed, realizing that he had indeed changed. He no longer panicked when circuits hissed or panels blinked with unintelligible warnings. He had learned to think in sequences that blended human logic and alien design, improvising with tools he barely understood. His jokes had become less about masking fear and more about camaraderie, laughter bridging the gap between two species who were, in theory, worlds apart. The emergency alert suddenly blinked across the main console, red lights spinning, and a deep, resonant hum vibrating through the hull. "Ah," he said, adopting his most dramatic voice. "The ship wants me to feel important. I like it when ships talk to me. It's encouraging." "Not just any ship," the Queen corrected, stepping closer. "My ship, and I require your attention immediately. There is a threat approaching, unlike anything our quadrant has encountered." He groaned. "You mean this is my actual reward? A space menace, not a plaque?" Fine, fine. I'll save the galaxy. After I figure out how these blinking buttons don't electrocute me. Together, they moved through the command chamber. She pointed at a swirling holographic storm forming outside the viewport. A cluster of rogue asteroids interlaced with plasma storms, drifting directly into the ship's path. Manual navigation is impossible, she said. Only someone capable of thinking unpredictably, blending logic with intuition, can guide us through. He looked at the storm, then at the holographic controls. Unpredictable, you say? That's basically my middle name, he quipped, pressing panels and toggling switches with the kind of haphazard confidence that had served him surprisingly well throughout the ship. The ship groaned, lights flashing in rhythm with his fingers, reacting to his half-thought, half-instinct commands. You are reckless, the Queen said, a twitch of her ear betraying amusement. But it is working. As they navigated the storm, the human had to rely not just on his technical skills, but on intuition honed through days of confinement, trial, and the subtle guidance of the Queen herself. Each maneuver through the plasma storms brought sparks of danger, literally, but also exhilaration. The ship responded to his instincts, almost as if it had learned to trust him, and in those moments he realized the bond between them was more than mere obligation or curiosity. The Queen and the ship were extensions of a world he had only glimpsed, and he was no longer an outsider. A rogue plasma bolt struck near the command chamber, spinning the ship slightly. He gripped the console and muttered, I am not panicking. I am theatrically improvising. The Queen gave a small laugh, the sound blending with the hum of the engines, and he felt the tension ease. Humor, it seemed, could survive even in the heart of danger. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours, but gradually the ship emerged from the plasma storm intact. The rogue asteroids were avoided, the energy fields dodged, and the human was still alive, mostly thanks to instinct, sometimes luck, and occasionally the Queen subtly nudging the ship with her own control inputs. He slumped against the console, breathing heavily. Survived, check, not dead. Check, also heroic, triple check. The Queen approached, her expression unreadable for a moment, then softened. You have done more than repair a ship. You have earned its trust, and mine. You understand now that your actions carry weight beyond yourself. He smiled, feeling a warmth he hadn't expected. I've learned a lot, mainly that spaceships and queens have a sense of humor, and apparently it's lethal if ignored. She tilted her head, studying him, and for the first time he saw something resembling genuine admiration, or perhaps acknowledgement. And you have grown. From a mechanic who feared sparks to someone who commands even the unpredictable. That is rare among humans. He chuckled softly. Rare is my specialty, alongside improbable survival and sarcastic commentary. She reached out, placing a gloved hand briefly on his shoulder. The gesture was simple, but it carried the weight of respect, trust, and a subtle invitation. You are no longer merely a visitor in my world. You are part of it in ways neither of us expected. The human looked around the ship, the gleaming corridors, the softly pulsing panels, the hovering maintenance bots that seemed almost sentient, and realized how far he had come. He had entered as a nervous, slightly overconfident man with a toolbox and a stubborn streak. He was leaving as someone capable of navigating unknown technology, bridging two species, and thriving under pressure without losing his sense of humor. As the artificial day cycle began, the Queen activated the ship's engines, a low, harmonious hum resonating through the hull. Shall we continue our journey? She asked. Absolutely, he said, feeling a grin spread across his face. But first, coffee. Her laughter echoed through the chamber, and for the first time, he understood that confinement, danger, and rogue plasma storms had been training grounds for more than skill. They had been lessons in trust, resilience, and connection. The ship hummed in agreement, lights dancing in celebration, and he realized that while the stars stretched infinitely ahead, he was no longer adrift. As they prepared to leave the debris field behind, the human glanced at the Queen. You know, he said, next time we get trapped on a ship, can we at least have snacks and a couch? She smiled, ears twitching slightly. Perhaps, but only if you continue to surprise me. And with that, the ship launched into hyperspace, leaving behind danger, fear, and hesitation. The human floated slightly in zero gravity, a sense of achievement washing over him, knowing that the galaxy was vast, unpredictable, and full of adventure. But now, at least, he had a place in it, alongside a queen, a ship that could almost think, and the beginnings of a connection that would endure far beyond the stars. For the first time since he had arrived, he laughed, a genuine, unguarded sound. "All right, universe," he said aloud. "I'm ready for whatever comes next. Let's make it interesting." And the stars answered with a sparkle, as if agreeing wholeheartedly.